Thank you everybody for coming. I guess just to preface what we're talking about today, in the industry you can see there's a driver at the moment for organisations to improve efficiencies, and these technologically driven through both automation and through innovations in technology. So what we're going to be talking about today is the key drivers associated with those that our industry specialists are going to give their insights on. So many companies are starting to shape their long-term strategies around the mine of the future. And when we say mine of the future, we're not talking just about production in mining. We're talking about the entire mining value chain, from grassroots exploration, through production, through metallurgy, and right through to your rehabilitation and your product or commercialization as well. So it encompasses the entire suite when we talk about the digital mine. So with the companies building these strategies, what does this actually mean for GIM, or for Geoscientific Information Management? So we have three panelists here today who are key leaders within this space, who will be giving us their insights on the digital mine and also what this means for them from a people, process and technology perspective. So I'm just going to introduce the three panelists now. Our first panelist is Dave Eden. So Dave is the Director of Technology Strategy in the Technical Services Geology team for Kinross Gold. He manages the corporate reserve and resource reporting process, technical audits, the preparation of technical reports for public disclosure. He also oversees the corporate team for the geological data, the data systems. Next to Dave, we have Mike McClelland. So Mike has actually participated in our panels a few times, so it's great to have a repeat offender come back and assist us today. So Mike is the Director of Exploration at Cameco Exploration. And after 25 years of diverse mineral exploration roles with several different tiered and commodity-focused companies, Mike now directs Cameco's global exploration dataset centralisation, visualisation and business performance initiatives. And lastly, at the end, we have Stan Wholley, who is the President of the Americas for CSA Global. Now, CSA Global is one of our Nova partners within the global network. He's had 25 years experience in exploration and mining. In his role, he provides high-level advice on the diverse range of topics from project management, valuation, and geo-corporate strategy relating to stock exchange reporting and compliance. So I just wanted to thank the three gentlemen for participating today in the discussion that we're going to be having. So I will be asking a variety of questions to the panel, and if we have time at the end, I will open up to the floor for the audience to ask questions, or if you have any comments that you wanted to direct to the panels. And hopefully we'll have some time to do that at the end. So I'm going to direct the first question to Dave. So Dave, what do you see are the biggest trends that you're seeing in the industry associated with moving to the digital mine?
I think in my mind, one of the things is it's the ability to optimize in ways that we haven't been able to before. So, I mean, it's starting with your geological data, building a resource model, then a mine plan, then processing and dispatches. All those tasks, all those processes, the data are there. The ability to optimize is a lot greater than it was. And we need that because we're dealing with more challenging ore bodies for the most part. We have to sharpen our pencils. But the other, I think that goes along with this ability to optimize. It doesn't mean we're going to be doing it right. And I see there's a not insignificant risk of getting bogged down. Now there's all these data feeds that we can put in, and ideally, in theory we could do a lot with it, but we could also just get stuck. I don't want to end on a negative note, but yeah. There's an upside and a downside.
Oh, absolutely, yeah. And I guess we are seeing larger volumes of data coming out from a variety of sources within the industry at present, and I guess the forecast is that there will be a lot more coming as well. So Mike, your thoughts on the question?
I totally agree with Dave. The trick is with the amount of data that we have and big data is how to synthesize it to a point that it doesn't become belaboring. To give people enough information to understand that there is or isn't a problem, and being able to dig at that and find solutions. So there is, even though we are in a big data world, we have to synthesize things so that it's simple for people to understand if we're on or off track.
So do you feel, I guess, with that, having the core foundation of a solid data set helps with this?
It's fundamental.
Yeah.
You know, you can do all the measuring that you want, but if your data's disaggregated, it'll never be coming together properly.
Absolutely. So Stan, your thoughts on trends within the digital mine?
Yeah, look, I think the geology industry's always been pretty good at collecting data. We've always collected a pretty diverse data set, but we really now have a greater opportunity to collect these data in real time, and I think there's an expectation that analysis should happen in real time as well. And so one part is the aggregation of data, and that's important, and I think doing it well, as was mentioned, is fundamental. But I think then also integrating those data sets in a way that improves mining and allows you to optimise efficiently. I think a lot of people in the past have sort of said, oh, we'll do a gold assay for our gold project, and that's about as far as we'll go. Realistically now, I think you should be looking at, proper lithogeochemical samples. You need to be looking at spectral data. You need to understand the mineralogy of your deposit and use those things to optimise the actual resource model. And then you can hand that to your engineer, and he can do his job properly by scheduling the ore correctly and in a logical sequence, which then allows the mill to operate at its optimum level. And I think that integration of data is the bit that we're really going to see advances in the next little period. And I think we're really at a tipping point in the industry where we've got a lot of smart older guys that aren't very good with computers, and we've got a lot of younger people who are really good with computers but probably don't have the knowledge. Now is the time to build a bridge between those two things and really transform our industry.
So do you see any other trends? I'll open the question to the three of you. I mean, so we're talking about data, but just trends in general within the mining space?
Look, I think analysis of data, using computing power to analyse data correctly is, you hear it all the time, machine learning and AI, but there's a number of companies that are doing that and having quite good success in using it in predictive ways sometimes, in kind of ore sorting technologies. Other people are doing it. We do a little bit of work in the geochemistry space where we're doing self-organising maps, looking for cluster analysis to help us find data or anomalies that have been lost in data previously. So I'd say analysis and the holy grail, I think, is moving towards real-time connectivity and automation ultimately is probably for the final mining stage anyway.
Mike, Dave, any additional comments just from generally trends within the digital mine space?
I think so you mentioned about automation. I think that's just something that we don't know exactly what that's going to look like yet. Things like autonomous or robotic vehicles, and I think that could lead to. I mean, imagine if you have an open pit with you hardly ever have people in there. Yeah. You could afford to be a bit more aggressive with slope angles, things like that. Still have to monitor. You don't want it to collapse, but there's things where you can remove the worker risk. Yeah. There's different ways of thinking about it.
Mike?
Accountability.
Yeah.
I think that we in the last cycle, a lot of people had some hard learnings, and it seems that companies are demanding accountability.
Okay, so I'll just move on to the next question, and I'll direct this one to you, Mike, to start with. So what role do you think data plays in the future for the digital mine?
Again, using that word is fundamental. If you're not collecting and measuring, how are you ever going to understand your performance or where there's opportunities for improvements?
So I guess one thing we've seen in the past, particularly across the mining value chain, lots of silos across the different departments. Do you see organisations being more open to distributing that data and I guess creating platforms for the data?
For us, it's wide open. People can see whatever they need to see to do their job. So making it available, accessible, and I don't know about most companies, but I really, before we were sort of cloak and dagger and not sharing data and very segregated. And it seems like we've matured to a point where that cone of secrecy is not there anymore, which is good.
Yeah, I think the minerals industry, can learn probably quite a lot from the oil industry. I think they've had a lot bigger data sets to work with. It's better funded. The projects are generally larger. I think they have really, really big data sets. I don't think we're anywhere near really big data yet in the minerals business. I think there's a lot more things we can do to do that. But the oil and gas industry do collaborate a lot. If you look at any big project that goes ahead almost anywhere in the world. There's usually 2 or 3 big partners in that process, and as the tide rises, as that knowledge rises, they all rise together, and that's really important. And I think collaboration across companies is another thing that has to improve in our industry. As a consultant, we have to collaborate a lot. That's what we do. But I think industry often sees that whatever gain they can make as a commercial advantage, and sometimes it is, sometimes there is a commercial advantage, but often it's not. Often it's just something that someone else could use and it would make it more sustainable for everybody. So I think we should probably just open those doors a little bit more.
Yeah. That makes a lot of sense. I mean, like there's the distinction, like there's competitive advantage, and then there's the best practice, right?
Yeah.
And you're not going to get a competitive advantage by having best practice, but the best practices are still good to do. Yeah, and that's where people or companies have an incentive to cooperate. And I agree. Things like standards for data. That's one of the areas where the industry can really can work together.
So that is starting to happen in this mining standards group. But again, it's organisations both from the Met's perspective and also the mining companies that need to get involved and help encourage and push this along as well. Otherwise, it becomes a fairly academic process.
Yeah, something that was mentioned before was accountability, and I think the kind of investor base and the general communities do want more accountability from mining companies, and that can actually be achieved through good and open data, right? And explaining to people how important we are to the local communities where we work. It can be as simple as that, but having standards that measure the performance of companies in their, whether it be in their community or the financial metrics that we all get measured by, I think it's really important.
I guess there's a lot of buzzwords at the moment around data intelligence, artificial intelligence, machine learning. So what are your thoughts on that with relation to information or geoscientific information?
I mean, one thing I noticed that so we at Kinross we've had a geochemist looking at these things for the past several years, and they're among the pioneers. I shouldn't say, at least in the mining industry, right? And a lot of the first people to do it have been the geochemists because they have these very large data sets, and so I think it's a natural extension of the way that geologists have always worked, where you look at a very broad set of data, and these tools, they really are great. You can find patterns that the human mind cannot see unaided, and as long as it's being done, in all these cases, so it's not a data scientist, it's a geochemist who learned the data science, right? So you have to understand, how the minerals form and all the proportions and the stoichiometry, that kind of thing. If you have that solid, then you can use these tools to your advantage.
Mike, your thoughts?
I guess a lot of people are very promotional about artificial intelligence. Certainly, it has its spot. But a lot of things, you get these algorithms and you get so far from reality when we're at a loss anyway as mineral explorers, and then you start interpolating to a point where it's meaningless. So the best pathfinders are what you're looking for.
Yes, absolutely. Stan?
I think it comes back to collecting the right data and collecting it well and cataloguing it properly. And then you'll find when any you do these kind of machine learning type things, and we do it a bit in geochemistry, almost 80% of the time is spent preparing the data for the machine to read. And then there's a few, most of the machine learning things are open source algorithms that you can use. And once you've got a smart person, I'm not one of them, but I've got a couple of guys in the organisation that are, and we do use them to find things that you just don't have the computing power in your brain to find by multivariate analysis. You can only look at so many things and compare them, but a computer can do that numerically, like just time after time after time, and then you have the smart data scientist saying, is that real? Is that something I should follow up, or is that just a machine telling me some crap? So you still do need that data professional or the mining engineer or whoever it is overseeing that, but it's a really powerful tool to look through old data sets as well, was where we found it. Where kind of people who collected the data, they said, we didn't find what we were looking for, but perhaps they didn't look hard enough.
That's actually a really good segue because it leads into my next question, and I'll direct it to you, Stan, to start with. So, do you see the current roles in the industry changing as we move towards the digital market?
Yes, I do. I still think there'll be a crusty old bearded, beer-drinking geologist stuck out in the bush at some point. Well, I hope there is, actually. I hope that's always the case. But I think they'll have along with them, an XRF gun, a hyperspectral gun, a laser ablation gun, and they'll be gathering data faster so they can think about it more when they take that data back, or they can think about it while they're in the field and make more efficient use of their time. So I think, and on the other side is the analysis of the data. I think the people coming out of university, I think universities probably have to catch up a bit here. I think they are in some cases, but really training them to use computers well, make them understand how to analyse data really well, and also, I guess, like I said before, somehow build a bridge between the knowledge that, unfortunately, is kind of slipping out of the industry because it's kind of an ageing population. We've had a couple of cycles where a lot of people have left the industry. We've been left with the people that love it, but they are ageing, and so we've got to bring them along as well. But I think that interface of computing and technical knowledge is really going to be really very important.
Oh, absolutely. And so your thoughts, Mike?
There's so many demands in the business world now. We just have to do things smarter. I don't think that your core role will ever change, but all the things on the periphery, any efficiency is just going to help you get through your day. You need something else. All the demands that are on companies now, whether it be your day job, you're doing things with HR, SHEC, community relations. All of that is becoming a larger and larger overhead. So we just have to work smarter.
I'd love to understand how we can do that though. Everyone seems to be juggling a lot of different things these days, so it's how you prioritise what you really need to focus on. So, Dave?
Yeah, no, I completely agree. I think that with what you said, Mike, about essentially the same roles, but just maybe a different focus. And one that I was thinking about this, but one that I see is that the time spent on different tasks might be a bit different. And so, for example, with more things like core scanning and so maybe won't be as much time spent logging core, and that's a bit scary, right? Because you think that we might have geologists not looking at rocks as much anymore, and I agree that's a very dangerous thing. But I think that if you use these new tools like core scanning or downhole and drones mapping a pit face could save you you do in a few weeks what used to take months of wall mapping, right? That kind of thing. So there might be more time available for analyzing and interpreting rather than just raw data collection. However, we might just burden them with more, like I said, all these little devices that they might just be just collecting different types of data and spending equal time. But I think there might be more time allowed for interpreting and analyzing.
I hope so anyway, because that is, I think we've been collecting lots of data and people do expect things to happen faster. And if you can collect it and analyse more efficiently and think about it more, that's a good outcome.
Absolutely, and that's the ultimate outcome that most organisations want, is that the geologist is spending a lot more time analysing and interpreting the data than collecting potentially the data or cleaning or massaging the data as well. So really looking at refining what their core role should be, not what it's been, I guess, in the last 10 years or so with different data methodologies. So that was actually my last question. So I wanted to open it up to the audience. If you have any comments or questions you wanted to direct to the panelists. Yeah.
I heard Dave, you say that there was a danger of paralysis by analysis if you're trying to do too much at once. And Stan, I heard you say that connection across the pillars of your organisation is high importance. If each of you had one bet to make, would you spend it on getting your upstream activities and risk reduction upstream so that your downstream processes were more likely to be right or accurate? Or would you spend it in connectivity in real time so that if you had to make an adjustment because the upstream changed, where would you make that bet?
Can't I have an each way bet? Look, I think connectivity is probably the way I would go, and I say that because if you have that connectivity, hopefully you can solve the other problem in a realish time way. So I would say that that's where I would head with that. And we're just going to have to, because there is all these tools. We've all walked around here. There's some fantastic tools that are going to make data collection, particularly around geology, fundamentally different. And there'll be a time in the not too distant future where a geologist won't be sitting around a rig very much, but they still will probably have a better understanding of the mineralogy and stuff of rocks through the use of all those things, borehole televiewers, real-time analysis of rig with XRF or XRD, spectrum analysis. Probably drifting more into geology than the mine side there, but it could equally apply to ore sorting. It can equally apply to sampling of concentrates and correcting mill circuits and those kind of things. So connectivity for me.
Completely agree. Well done.
Yeah, the ability, like I think you saw it, if you would choose one superpower, it's either you're really awesome at planning or you're really awesome at being agile. I think you're better at being agile because, you know, the plan or the upstream, you know, it's still, the reality might change that. Both would be nice, but yeah, no, I think, yeah, like I agree with you guys that, yeah, the ability to react and adapt is more important.
Thank you.
Great. Do we have any more questions?
I heard you guys mention data fusion and how powerful it can be, especially for kind of closing that chasm between the different silos within the organization. What are some kind of really powerful tools that you guys are seeing become more prominent in the space for data fusion?
For us, we really like the term geometallurgy, and we like putting the geo more than metallurgy into that. And so when we build models, we very much like to collect lithogeochemical data, spectral data, normal assay data, and structural data. And if you collect those four things routinely, and also actually some geotechnical data, if you collect those 5 things and build them into your model, it's an incredibly powerful tool. We've seen examples where it's had between 20 and 30% NPV improvement by really understanding the domain and being able to sequence an ore body correctly for optimal mill feed. And if you can do that, and it's often difficult to, when we're advising a client, we think you should collect these data. It's like, why should I do that now? It's exploration, that's a mining problem. But for an incremental spend of maybe 10 or 15% more on that exploration program, as that program grows and the money you make at the other end, it's a pittance. It's a tiny fraction of the cost of savings you can make in your metallurgical sampling by being able to understand how to metallurgically sample representatively, and it has a whole lot of other benefits for all the other disciplines that use it. So that would be it for me, like really understanding those 5 things at the time you do your exploration.
In the exploration world, it's really about the 3 Gs, geology, geophysics, geochemistry, and the financial piece, and enriching your activities to the actual cost of them. I don't think that that's something that a lot of people think of, but with Acquire even, you can be real-time understanding what your costs are and feeding those into your production rates and understanding things very dynamically.
Yeah, well, no, I mean, very, very similar, Kinross. Like with us, it's we chose 4 Gs, so geology, geochemistry, geometallurgy, and geotechnical. And geophysics isn't, quite so important for us. But they're all elements of characterizing the ore body really well, and the effort to look at what stage do you need to collect what data. It really helps drive collaboration and communication, and it can just lead to a better product.
Great, time for one more question.
We use the dreaded term standardization. I certainly wouldn't like to be the person who had to come up with that standard code. But as the amount of data we collect grows and its importance in what we does grows, do you not think the mining codes should be a bit stricter on how we report on them? As it stands, most data verification paragraphs are 5 lines long, just to say 5% of the data was checked and it was all good. There's no requirement to report on how it was managed, how it was collected, what the process was. We go into great depth talking about our sample submission procedures and our chain of custody, but we gloss over the chain of custody in data management, and that's almost as important as making sure the actual sample gets to the lab itself, making sure that result gets back to where it came from. Do you think that the mining code should put more emphasis on that?
I have had this discussion with regulators that we've gone through this process of change, and data is so important, and yet it still says, I 43.1 anyway, you have to have a sound database, but that can be on paper. It doesn't specify that it should be something that's auditable and reliable, like a choir. I think it probably should be mandated that you have that kind of thing, because data is the foundation on which we all make decisions, whether that is a technical decision in a mine, whether it's a merger or acquisition decision. You go back and you look at the data, and it still surprises me today that some quite apparently sophisticated companies present us with a series of Excel spreadsheets and say, can you tell us how much our project's worth? And to me, I'm like, really? Where did that spreadsheet come from? What is the chain of command for that spreadsheet? Because it gets in someone's hand and they move it. Yeah, that's what it says. It says you have to have a sound database, I think is the exact language. So I wouldn't mind seeing that in there. Unfortunately, the JORC code has just gone through a new revamp, and they didn't do it. And it took about 4 years to get the last revamp done, so it's probably not coming anytime soon. But we encourage our clients to always do it. Come to the first thing that goes into do it.
My comment is I don't really, we have so many gatekeepers and policing organizations but at the end of the day, the qualified person, that's on them. And regardless of what you write in a mining code or what other legislation you put in place, at the end of the day, it's up to the professional.
Yeah, I would actually concur with that as well. The whole point of the code is to have a qualified person use that code to get the best result. But equally, it certainly doesn't hurt mandating a few simple things to make it all better.
I certainly wouldn't want to see the geoscience police coming around and, just another thing to deal with.
It's perhaps one way of dealing with that. So I have to be careful. I don't know how much I can say. So I am working with a CIM committee, which is what NI 43.1 references, and we're looking at. And this is more in the realm of guidelines, but I think you'll see future things that will maybe not a mandate, but at least more specific in the language that there should be a proper database. So I think you will see it. It'll be a bit more specific, but not necessarily a mandate.
Okay, so I think we'll wrap it up there now. It's just over time. So I just wanted to extend a thanks to our three panelists, Dave, Mike, and Dan. I was going to say Stan then. Dan. For giving us their insights in the digital mine. Please stay around. We have some news that we'll be offering straight away after this. And if you've got any further questions, the panelists will be staying around for a little bit as well. So thank you.
Thank you.
All right, thanks, Alison.